In accordance with, thank you. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting will be recorded and can be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours of the meeting. The public meeting is being conducted remotely. The following information is also provided for the meetings of the for the members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. From a computer, please view the invite link below on the agenda. And if you're using the phone, there are telephone numbers that you can call. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 3:02 on April 25th, 2023. And I invite any public comment. Okay, you've had your chance.
Now this is openness. This is good. You gave us a chance.
You're learning this. That's good.
So we'd like to make a public comment.
Please go ahead.
All right. Phyllis Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. On April 14th, Carl and I sent an email to the BOA with suggestions for how we could see the abatement process working better. We offered these suggestions speaking for ourselves only, although we feel many others may benefit from this approach. We haven't heard back from anyone on this email and would like to summarize these suggestions now. First, we would appreciate it greatly if the inspection reports and suggested property values generated by the company that completed the inspections be made available to the specific property owner as soon as available, but no later than 1 week prior to the Board of Assessors consideration of that abatement application. Second, we would also appreciate being able to be present during the BOA's process to determine the outcome of our abatement requests, Zoom, in person, however the BOA prefers that to happen. 3, if we are able to be present, we'd like to spend 2 to 3 minutes summarizing our position or submit a document summarizing if verbal communication will not be allowed. Yes, these are unusual requests, but this is a very unusual and very costly position many of Lunenburg's citizens have been placed in. Questions now. Have any decisions been made on these suggestions and/or has the abatement determination process been discussed or finalized? If not, when will it? When will residents be informed of how this will work? We've been advised that once the waterfront property abatements begin to be heard, there will be no changes in the process allowed. Residents have a right to know what that process will be before it begins. This is a very reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. To answer your question, what we are going into executive session after we're done here this afternoon, and all of those questions are actually going to be discussed. We don't have a final report. What we want to discuss with the inspectors is what they have and how to present it. And yes, I agree with you. It's going to be public. As soon as we get it, we will probably put it through.
Thank you.
I guess I'll make my comment now if I could, sir. Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I think I just heard you say that these general topics, and I'm sure more, we're going to be discussed in the executive session. And I think that's not a valid subject for executive session. My understanding of the executive session as it was posted was that it is to discuss abatements, non-lakefront abatements, which is a valid reason, and you note the valid reason, but discussing matters such as the questions that Phyllis has and more, I believe in executive session, would violate open meeting law. I think these have to be discussed in public session. So I would caution you on that. And I'm not sure why you feel that that has to be done outside of the public.
Well, because we don't have any of the answers, Carl. We're still waiting for a report.
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought your intention was to discuss these things in your executive session today.
Oh, there's a lot of things we're going to be discussing in executive session. Some of it is meeting with Nate Kramer, with the investigation team.
Again, I would caution you that that is not a valid purpose for executive session. It certainly doesn't fall under the purpose 9 or 7, I think, that you called out, which is specifically related to having an abatement application in the meeting. That forces an executive session. That's fully understood. That's the only reason that you've posted for an executive session. So unless the discussions you're talking about fall under some other purpose, you would need to identify that purpose that open meeting law allows in that executive session. Otherwise, we're all going to have a serious problem. So, I mean, these are things the public, I think, has a right to know how that discussion is, what the issues are, how that. I mean, specifically in the open meeting law, it's so the public can understand deliberations and what factors go into the decisions that are made. The decisions are up to you, but the public has a right to know what factors and what discussions are had relative to those decisions. So I think this is dangerous territory here that I'm hearing.
Well, I'm a rookie on that, Carl. I'm not really an expert on open meeting law. I'll be the first one to admit. However, it's my understanding that this has been reviewed by the and correct me if I'm wrong. It's been reviewed by the town management, and we don't have any answers as far as the reports go. We don't know exactly what it is. There are inconsistencies. We want to make sure that everything is consistent.
And I applaud you for that. And that's the first place to start with any data is it good data and consistent and so forth. But this is public information and should not be buried under an executive session. And I would caution you to not do this until you really reviewed what the true agenda is and see if that qualifies for executive session.
Well, I think we should roll.
I don't want to slow the process down. I know you don't know the answer.
We want to get
to the answers.
And as soon as we have we don't have the answers. We don't even. That's the whole thing. What? Oh,
Well, you are going to be talking about, you're going to be discussing with Nate what he's come up with. And if it pertains to the abatements, that is confidential, so it does come under.
Okay, I was just advised that we are just going to be discussing with Mr. Kramer the nature of the abatements, and that is confidential at this point in time.
I think it's only confidential if you have a specific abatement application on the table. It's the application that has to be kept confidential. Really not much of anything else about the abatement process.
Yeah. The decision has to be done in executive session.
The decision is done in executive session.
Correct.
Okay, we haven't made any decisions yet. We're still waiting for information as to how to make those decisions.
Yes, as we all are, and we would like that to happen in open meeting, which I think is where it belongs. I don't know. I don't understand. We have a contractor, which is great. They did a good job. I understand who's in to talk to you about what the process was, what you're going to get, when you're going to get it, what it contains. That should be all public information. Again, unless you have a specific application on the table for the discussion, I don't know. It does not. I don't believe, and maybe there's someone else there who wants to actually give their name who knows better than that. Of why you believe it is executive session material.
Huh?
You could take it up with town council.
Yeah, we take it up with town council, but that's going to take more and more time. if we have to wait for them.
Or you could just have this discussion in public when you reconvene.
We really don't know. I'm willing to roll the dice. Minutes will be taken. You could file a grievance if you wish.
If you must proceed, which I really think is putting the town at risk, then I would encourage you, and I think maybe you already will, have this recording continue through that executive session. So the full content and extent of the discussion is known, and it's not just restricted to what gets put into minutes. So I would make that formal request if you decide to proceed, which I hope you don't. Again, I don't understand what's confidential about what we paid the contractor to do.
We're paying the contractor to do an independent assessment, as you well know, but he has other suggestions. And we may have actually some disagreements with him about about how to proceed with these other questions.
And I applaud you for wanting to do due diligence and push back where you feel is necessary, but that is not executive session material in my mind. And I don't know why that has to be kept. I mean, disagreements happen in public all the time. That's part of the process. It would be good for the public to see pushback, perhaps, I don't know, or to know. But again, it's an open meeting law issue, and I don't know why it can't happen in public.
Can we record this to be available later on? We can do that. We can record it to be available later on, Carl.
Okay,
If that
all right. That would be the least I would ask for. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Is there any other public comments? Oh, Mr. Rabbit.
Good afternoon. Hey, first of all, it was good to see Nate for a second. He's back. He's in the corner there, and everyone else. Hey, a couple of things, Rich. And I know you and I have spoken with it, and Chris and I have said we're all of the belief that we want to be as open and as opaque as possible with regard to allowing the public to see in. And I'm kind of going on, having done a pile of executive session meeting requirements that we all have to do every couple of years and things. I don't believe that to discuss the process, excuse me, I'm sorry, discuss the process, stop. I'm sorry. Discuss the process that you might be able to use would necessarily constitute any divulgence of any personal data that would be the reason for you wanting to go into executive session. And I don't see a problem, even if Nate were able to, hey, Nate, if we're able to come in with some sort of gross number discussions and things like that, where it's not affecting our negotiating power or anything like that, that it wouldn't necessarily be a violation of anybody's personal data. So I'm kind of thinking that I'm kind of leaning on Carl's side, Rich, that let's let it all, let's let everybody see as much as we possibly can without going down at anybody's personal level. And I'm particularly interested in, there are, depending on what Nate comes up with, there are all sorts of options, including one of them is to essentially go back to DOR and let's do the whole town all over again. Is that a possibility, Nate? He's shaking his head. No. Okay. Darn. Well, I was hoping that way we would save ourselves $1 million. But there must be all sorts of routes and all sorts of avenues that we can pursue that are going to allow the citizens to participate as much as they can and see as much as they can. And to Phyllis's point, allow them to write, receive that information in advance and, to give them a chance to at least write some sort of note, given this current data, to move ahead and argue their point. So I don't see really any major difficulty in, as long as we stay away from personal data in your discussions. So I'm, again, I'm an outsider right now. So I'm in support of being as open as we possibly can. with the public. And I appreciate your opportunity to say, let's tape what happened in that executive session and share that. I think that's a good idea, Rich. Thank you. I'm out of here. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, you're excused.
Okay. I'll take my hand down too, if I can figure out how to do it. Lower hand.
Well, it's up to Kevin. I have no problem taping it, do you?
I have no problem taping executive session, if that's what you're talking about.
So
Talking about.
should we take a motion about taping executive session?
Ken, sure.
I'll second it.
Okay,
All in
move
favor?
to record the executive session for later consumption by the public.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we will record the executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Rich, Lou's got his hand up, and Dave
Oh.
McDonald's, there's two hands still up.
okay. Oh, is Nate waving as well?
He doesn't have his hand up, though.
Okay.
I
Lou,
was-
Are you
Just
next?
waiting.
Okay. Mr. Franco.
Okay, now, while I admitted I missed the first 2 minutes of the meeting, which apparently was critical because I don't know exactly. I gleaned from later discussion what you wanted to discuss in executive session. And I just want to comment that maybe the better route, anything that goes to procedure and how you might attack things and how any deliberations you're going to have as to the process and how you intend to slice and dice the data that you get, that is public discourse. I mean, if you see the select board meetings, you're watching the sausage being made all the time. It's ugly sometimes, but it's public discourse. It has to be. So and also, as far as the stated objective of the executive session, that's quite the line between executive session and non-executive session is clear enough, I think. And I mean, and yes, anything relating to any particular abatement application, yes, that is definitely executive session confidential material for sure. But as far as process and how many how many reviews have been done and what are we going to do? Are we going to let people come in and all? That's all public discussion. So maybe the thing to do is, I'm just going to throw this out. Instead of going into this executive session and discussing something that might be objectionable to discuss in executive session, and then releasing that recording later, which would then release the recording of everything, even stuff that is confidential, perhaps you should make a pledge to avoid certain topics within the executive session that might be the proper fodder for public meeting. That's all I'm going to say, even if it does cause.
I'm fine with doing the procedural discussions as far as how we're going to attack it in the public session. That's, as long as we're not discussing anything related to the specific abatements in question, if we're just talking about the process of how it's going to go, I have no particular objection to doing that in the public session anyway, honestly.
Right.
Super.
You really have to do that in the public session. Ultimately, at some point, you cannot have that discussion in executive session. So whether that's today or another day, you cannot have a procedural discussion in executive session. You can only have. There's two layers here. There's what's proper fodder, and I think Mr. Luck and the Lucks have it right here in terms of this line that they've drawn today. But also you can't go outside the scope of what you specifically said you were going to discuss on the agenda in executive session, regardless of whether let's say you were going to discuss items A, B, and C in executive session, but you only said you were going to discuss item C in executive session. That's all you can do. You have to narrowly tailor and limit what you stated on the agenda.
Now, do we have the agenda for today's meeting?
Right there.
I just wanted to see, do we have
There are a couple of abatements that we,
Right, I know that's gonna be executive, and that's.
Yes, that can definitely, abatements can absolutely be
Yeah.
discussed. in
We've got a
executive
few of those that are being decided. They're non-lakefront properties, but
Yep.
I think some actual specific, correct me if I'm wrong, some actual specific lakefront properties may be referenced as an example. I don't know if that's.
You mean-
In other words, I think that, well, the preliminary report came out and I believe that there was some lakefront properties that were specifically mentioned with certain, some addresses and as to how the waterfront, how the waterfront was assessed and analyzed. Well, here's Nate, maybe you can help us out.
Yeah, I don't want to give any opinion on whether or not what you're doing is right or wrong. I don't want to get hung up on, it sounds like, it almost sounds like no matter what you do, somebody's going to complain about it, right? So, but so I do have a draft report ready to go, and there are specific properties talked about in the draft report. My goal for this meeting was to go over this report and before it's made public. I wrote it with the assumption that it would be made public, but I would like a chance to review it with the Board of Assessors prior to that happening, just as a second, third, and fourth set of eyes, for them to pick it apart and give me any feedback, so then I can go and wrap it up and make it a final report.
That was my impression as to what we were going to do also.
Well, okay, this is definitely a tightrope walk.
I don't care if it's public or not, but it's up to you guys.
To the extent that general impressions, properties can be brought up without names or addresses, to say, for example, there was one property in which, there was one property that was anomalous because blah, 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 without mentioning a name or address. I think that can be done. But as far as, and then like general trends, like, there might be discussion of once Nate drilled down on it, and there was more detail. Not all properties were the same, for example, and that, some are more desirable than others, or, those general observations and discussions that are in the report, I think not only can be discussed in public, I think they must be.
So, so in saying what you just said, there are specific, in this draft report, there are specific addresses, and right there, I feel is good feedback. And one of the reasons I wanted to have this meeting, so I probably should pull these addresses out and say one specific property, like you said, Lou. For that reason, I do understand why it should be executive session.
Yes, if a specific property or address or a name is mentioned, that's proper for executive session. But as far as say making, if there's going to be a discussion about how abatement deliberations on individual abatements should proceed procedurally within the confines of executive session, if that's something that's going to be discussed in general terms, that general discussion has to take place in the open air. So, if you're, for example, you say, you're going to have a discussion. 300 people submitted a request to have a verbal input. Are we going to allow that or not allow that? X number, I don't know what kind of detail you're going to get into. I don't know what's in the report, but X number of, we found this. We found this percentage of properties, this was properly assessed. These are the kinds of things, without mentioning names, I mean, that really open.
Lou, there are 2 pages here that specify addresses and certain things about the properties. I'm just wondering if we can have a hybrid meeting.
And my plan was to share my screen to go over it, so it's going to be right out there, so. Yeah.
Is it possible to go over these things first? And then go back to and reconvene?
I don't know that you can discuss it without being in a meeting.
No, what I mean is an executive session,
Oh.
discuss these specific properties that you mentioned in your report. And
Oh,
then,
delete them? like
we're
delete-
all,
I can
beg
go
your
through
pardon?
and try to delete the addresses before I share my screen. I mean, we'll just have to reschedule the meeting now. It's already been a half hour and we haven't started yet, so. Just tell me what you want to do.
I'd like to get this process going, and because I think the people have a need to know. And we want to be as transparent as possible. I'll go, are there things that you think of besides these addresses and these ratios and? that you
No,
think-
I don't anticipate making any changes in terms of removing something that you guys might not want to see, but it's more for feedback. Do you want me to elaborate more on this or that? I talk about other adjustments that I recommend. Are there any others that you've come up or that you know of that maybe I should add? You know, for adjustments that are on the land in terms of, you know, maybe it's a fire road or right of way or, you know, any topography. Is there anything else I should add to the report that would make it better? Stuff like that.
A lot of that's procedural. Well, how about we do the Zoom executive session and keep it open for the public. It will be available. We had talked about that earlier.
Yeah, all right, I'm just gonna say this, but then if you discuss stuff in executive session that should never be open, and you make that recording of the executive session available to the public, then.
I guess I'm of the philosophy, if we're going to make the executive session public anyway, let's reserve the executive session and for just the abatements. I mean, I guess I'm of the opinion that this report is ultimately going to be public anyway.
But it's going to be updated too, Kevin.
It won't, yeah, it might not be.
That's
It
not
might
the-
not be in its current form.
That's not the final report, I'm sure.
No, I understand that.
I think Dave McDonald might have had something to say.
Dave?
How you doing, guys? First of all, I do agree with Mr. Franco. By the way, my name is Dave McDonald, 155 Island Road, Lunenburg, Mass. Lakefront property owner. I do agree with Lou, and I do agree with you going to televise the abatement part of it and keeping some stuff private. I do appreciate that. But I do have a couple things to say real quick. One is I just want to thank Christine for her effort on the Board of Assessors. I know she'll be leaving after this year, so I just want to thank her for her service to the town. And I know it's been a rough year for her this year as well as you. I also got to thank Nate Kramer. He's a hell of a guy. He's honest. He's good. I totally respect his opinion, and so does a lot of other people. So Nate, from all of us, thank you very much for taking the time and doing this. And last, I'd just like to ask a favor that we have Renita Sweezy exclude herself when you discuss our property due to past experiences with her history from Groton and so on. So you could consider that. My wife and I would appreciate that, in all due respect. With that, I just want to thank you all for doing it. And hopefully we can see the end of the road coming. And again, I got to thank everybody for what you've been doing. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Dave, for your comment.
Mr. Chair, one more thing. I would also look at your rules, and I know it's tough because everybody wants to get their feelings out. But if you limit to public comment to 3 minutes, you would be done with this. So this is my opinion anyways. Again, thank you, guys.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part. You said if we limit it to public comment, what was that? I just didn't catch the last part of that.
3 minutes a speaker. That way there is fair. I think I just did mine in 2.7, 2 point, yeah, whatever. I mean, I know everyone's feelings are hot right now. But again, I think you got the right people in the right places right now. And I trust, especially Nate, I trust what he's been doing. And I hope this board looks at that and takes his advice. So that's all I wanted to say. And again, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
I don't even have a problem going to being in public period. And then once we start dealing, now can we, is there a way for us to block you out if we start dealing with specific addresses? Specific, we're not going to give any names, but there are addresses on this report. Lou?
Sorry, Nate, is there any way that you can, with regard to specific pages that show specific or names, are you able to just not display those pages while you discuss the their relevance, the relevance of what the content on those pages?
Yeah, I just won't share it. I just won't share it. And I just won't say the address. I was gonna share my screen so we can kind of go over it together, but I won't do that. I'll just read
All
it
right.
and skip over addresses.
Yep, but then when it gets to specific addresses or issues, you could discuss that in an executive session. If there's a particular issue with regard to a particular abatement, that's executive session.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't we proceed with the meeting? And I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Nate.
Okay, so you all, I'm not sure how many of you have seen the draft report that I sent.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I know.
we've seen it.
We've both read through it.
And I sent that in order to get feedback from you guys. So questions, comments, concerns, should I elaborate on anything? Is there anything in there, assuming that this report will be made public? Is there anything in there that I should define better? I think I tried to, some of the acronyms that we used, I tried to define them. So if somebody's reading them, they'll understand what the heck we're talking about. But is there anything,
Being a layman that was reading a lot of this stuff, I can vouch for the fact that most of the definitions were pretty clear, at least to me. And they don't get much more layman than me on this stuff because I'm still brand new to the committee, having board, whatever.
what an introduction.
We're still dealing with those 2022 properties that had sales on. So some of the inconsistencies were, it's my knowledge, not my knowledge, it's my understanding that your basis is based on all of 2020, all of 21, and in the event that there aren't enough sales, you pick up the first 6 months of 22 and the last 6 months of 20, or omit 22 altogether, and you have all of 2020. Is that correct?
Yep, you can do it either way. So you would want to do it consistently with any other class of property that you may have had to do that with. So I'm not exactly sure. I would imagine with commercial properties, the town, or maybe probably even condos, more than 1 year was required. So you can either do 2 full calendar years, which would be 2020 and 21, or you can use the last 6 months of 20, all of 21, and the first 6 months of 22.
Can I ask you I'm only going that so far because I'm just not that savvy on this.
Well, he's gonna
Oh.
use 22.
Okay. So have you eliminated some of the 22s or this is some of our disagreements with Nate, right?
Okay,
Have I eliminated some of the, well, yeah, I mean, I just had the concern that some late 22 sales were included in those tables.
Yeah, some sales from the second half of 2022 are included.
yes, so that's what I ended up with, but for the analysis that I did, those were pulled out, and I will, so let me write a note in here, and I'll just make sure that the numbers that I was coming up with do not include the first half of 20 or the second half of 22.
And would that change your report at all in any way?
I've played with these 6 different ways, and it doesn't, it's minimal.
So it may change some of the gritty data, but it does
Yeah.
the gross elements of it stay the same essentially.
Yeah, even after I put this together, I ended up getting in touch with another broker that I spoke with all the brokers that had a sale on the lake over the past 3 years. Or attempted to. So I'm still getting some random calls back. And so after I wrote this, I got a call and from a broker and actually disqualified 2 more sales from 21. So in my Excel spreadsheet where I have this data, I removed the sales and it really didn't change the numbers at all. So those sales actually do still show up in the report. But that's just an edit that I'm going to have to make. But you know, before I started, I guess I wanted to kind of collect all of your input and feedback and not go over it 18 times, just kind of go in and make all the changes at once.
Understood.
So I'm writing, I'm just gonna say, make sure these are.
And this included all arm's length sales specifically, although
Yep.
I'm not sure.
I went through every single lakefront sale that occurred in the past 3 years. Sorry, I'm typing and talking. Pulled every single deed, contacted, reached out to every single broker, spoke with most of the brokers, and by now we've seen, I don't know if we've seen all those sales yet, but I think we're over 300 inspected now. So physical inspections, reviewing the deeds, speaking with brokers, looking at the MLS sheets. I came up with a different set of qualified sales. I disqualified some sales that were initially qualified, and I qualified some sales that were initially disqualified. So I think what I got for 2021 was 6 sales, but became 4 sales after a call that I got after I wrote this. So you absolutely needed 2 years of sales for a single family.
Okay.
Or for the lakefront. So it's really for single families, but you look at all the single families in town, but because we're only looking at lakefront, I'm kind of using those same statistical guidelines. So, you know, saying 2% is statistically significant, but I'm only looking at the lake properties. So 2% of the 455 lakefront properties would be, I think,
9 sales.
yeah, 9.1 or something like that. So 4, we're at 4. So we needed 2 years.
Now, I have a couple of questions, and maybe you can help me out based on your experience. After reviewing your report, I've a couple of preliminary questions. Will the homeowner be issued a revised tax bill and these might be things that we have to discuss here, but I'm gonna throw them out for everybody. Do we go directly to the abatement process, or is this the abatement process? You're reviewing the abatements. Will the homeowner be advised of the new valuation prior to a subsequent abatement meeting?
So there's some gray area in that. So the inspections that we're performing and the data that we're changing, those will be seen in fiscal 24. A lot of the things that we're seeing may or may not have been there in 21. For instance, if somebody added mini splits or something like that, if they added them in 22, we can't make that adjustment on the 21 field card. Or the 23 field card, because it happened before the effective date.
Understand?
The problem here, clearly, so the data the data on the houses has been really good. We're making minimal changes. There are some that need more work than others, but for the most part, the data on the buildings is really good, surprisingly good. Like I do this in quite a bit, and I was like, wow, it's really accurate. The issue was in the land and specifically the land tables. So once we go over this and go back and forth, and you pick apart the data that I'm coming up with, and we argue and we land somewhere, either take it as is or we go back and forth a little bit. The change that's going to happen is going to be on the land table, so it will affect every single property at the same time. So how that goes, so I have a spreadsheet where that value could be entered once that land table is changed. And that should, I don't know, I don't think I can share that either, because addresses and names and phone numbers are on it.
Yeah, don't.
But basically it has, right now, it has SFYI, which is special features and yard items and building value. And then I'm putting a rating on it. So one of the things that I noticed in doing this study was that there's a clear difference between the sales that had good waterfront versus average waterfront versus below average waterfront. So in my spreadsheet, which you guys will get, the board will get it. It'll have the dates every single house is inspected, any comments, name, address, original value broken out by land, SFYI, and building, and the total, and then the new. And before you get to the new, there's a column where we are rating the waterfront. In our opinion, this waterfront is good or average or below average. My suggestion to the town would be to go back to those land tables, put it back to the fiscal 22 value, apply these increases or this increase that I'm seeing, say, whatever percent it is, bring it up to that point, make that average waterfront, because most of the houses are average waterfront. For houses that have really nice waterfront, they'll have a positive adjustment. For people that are in below average waterfront, so people that are deep in the coves or can't even get a canoe to their property midsummer because it's mud, they'll have a negative adjustment. We have plenty of data to extract those adjustments for average and good waterfront, but in the past 3 years, there's only been one sale of the below average waterfront. So it's hard to extract, what that negative adjustment should be right now. We will, that's, I guess, one of the things that, how do we figure that out? We'll have to go back. We'll have to do more than 2 years to figure that out. If this is the way the town decides to go. Using, what I'm suggesting.
Now, to follow up a little bit on Phyllis's question, when do you think that we'll be able to get a full report so that we can report back to the taxpayers?
I mean, if there are no comments or suggestions or concerns with this draft report that I have, I can take the watermark off it and call it a final report. I mean, it's any edits that I make or changes or anything that I add or change as a result of this meeting can be done pretty quickly.
Okay. Now, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I mean, I would love to see the pivot tables and all that, just to mess with them myself, but that would be, obviously,
That would be between you and Nate.
yeah, just on my own time, just to see what he did and for my own sake.
Now, can you supply that for CJ?
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Nate.
Any other questions?
I think he's covered most of what I had for questions.
There were some other things that I intended on doing before I submitted this report to the town, but I've gotten a little pushback. One of the things I wanted to do was have someone at the Department of Revenue review this and just kind of not give it a blessing, but just say, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Just because of the fact that the town's in a revale year and they don't have a revale contractor yet. I kind of wanted them to see it. So come fall, when DOR is reviewing it, it's something that they've already seen, so it wouldn't cause a hiccup down the road. They won't comment on it. They won't get involved in the abatement process. And even reviewing this, they consider being involved in the abatement process, and they're just not allowed to be involved.
Okay.
I was gonna ask you, does the DOR get re-involved? But you've just answered that.
Yeah, no, they don't, or they won't.
Okay, fair enough.
Well done with Nate.
I don't have any further questions.
You can take the rest of the afternoon off.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Nate.
No
Anybody else?
problem.
No. Okay, we'll be looking forward to seeing what else you come up with.
So no other feedback or anything you want me to elaborate on?
Yeah, you really did pretty much cover most of what I wanted to see in the draft.
Okay. I have some notes in here too, and that I'm gonna probably add a little bit more to it, not removing anything, just more things for just knowing that the public is gonna be seeing this. Give them everything and
Sure.
write it in a way that everybody can understand it. And I don't know if I wanna, do you want any of my opinions right now?
Sure, absolutely.
I can absolutely see how this happened using 2021 data. I backed into it and I can absolutely see how these adjustments were made. And how they got through and I can absolutely see it, but I think, just doing the work that I did, contacting all the brokers and reviewing all the deeds and coming up with a new data set that I came up with. You see a clear difference, but I can absolutely see how this happened. So that's all, and I'll probably add more to that in the report also. Explain more about how it happened. So that's it for
Okay,
me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
No problem.
So we just have expense vouchers, auto abatements, and payroll. And that's. Sheila, you forgot payroll. That's the most important thing.
This is our motor vehicle, right?
Oh, this is our motor vehicle, so Kevin and I'll,
Oh, I'm sorry, no. I'm good.
She's even better prepared than she thought she was.
I did it last week. I almost forgot. Yeah, these are just all motor vehicles.
and the motor vehicle abatements, for your information, all come from the registry anyway, and basically they come from the registry. And they're people who sold or rated it or wrecked their cars. Am I right?
Yeah. You are correct.
I learned all this from Lou Franco, you know, it's,
Feel like I'll borrow that pen, so. That one. Somewhere along the line, it fell out of my. Spot.
yeah, I did, I thought they were only two.
Assign that, so yeah, I'll get back to you. Yeah.
I have a couple months. March and April here. Which way there's so many.
Well, here's April right here.
These are just the sheets from the statements that were approved last meeting. These are just the totals.
Oh, just one?
Yes. Well, it's 3 packages of the same thing.
Oh. So this is the same as Kevin has.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a motor vehicle commitment that CJ did. I'm making 2 more copies because I need a total of 3 copies.
Okay.
I didn't realize there was only 1 copy.
Oh,
It's the exact same thing.
Go one more time.
1 more comment. That's the 3rd one.
Okay.
yeah.
This is more another motor vehicle commitment for 2019 vehicle that we had to bill for.
Do we have other?
Yep, so I'm making
Oh, you're
copies
making
now,
the others.
$32, 3
Okay,
cents.
all right. All that's at $32.
Well, when you
You can hardly get a good hamburger for $32.
No, you didn't.
Is that 3203?
Thank you.
Should be it.
What's the issue? Okay,
That's it.
Do something.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you, boys.
and with that, that ends the regular meeting unless there's something else. Oh, Mr. Franco.
Okay, one thing I will note, am I coming through now? One thing I'll note before is that also there are 2 other people's hands up, but what I wanted to note, just something on the agenda that you, the agenda notes that when you do the motion to go into executive session, that you're going to come back out and go into and not adjourn from the executive session. So see, do I have that right?
Well, our meeting is essentially done, Lou. The executive session is just dealing with a couple of abatements. And we could actually adjourn now and just do the executive session.
Well, what you'd have to do is alter the motion to say that you're going to enter executive session and not return to open meeting. That's all.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Public comment,
Well, you
public
have-
comment.
oh, sorry.
Uh,
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mr. Rabbit.
Thank you, Kevin. Hey, just a quick question. I appreciate having Nate here. And I had a question specific to, if you look at our certification standards of 2019, and on page 11, paragraph 5, it says, as best practices, any group, subgroup, or sample size of less than 5 sales can be enlarged, which we've done, to go to 6 months on either side. If the assessor decides to increase the reliability of the statistical measure, assessors can use up to a span of 5 years. I don't know what his report said, but usually you look for a number around 30 to start any kind of statistical significance. And I'm wondering why we did not go and look, look beyond that even that 2-year period. That was a particularly volatile period of time. And as seen by not only the interest rates, but the price of building materials and a lot of number of other factors that were along with zooming and no longer having to work out. That was an unusual period. Why wouldn't we have tried to look at a 5-year overall trend or some sort of moving average to come up with a more accurate projection of what the real values were? And I know that you're going to say the real values are what people paid for, but even now, if you look at things that are selling around the lakes, they're a good 100,000, some cases 200,000 below what they were back in that period of time. So why wouldn't we try and come up with some sort of an accurate methodology that is supported by our friends at not DOR, our local assessors board. So why wouldn't we try something like that? And I was going to leave that question with Nate, and I would appreciate it if you get a chance, guys, to ask Nate why we wouldn't try something like that. So anyway, that's my comment, and thank you very much, and keep up the good work. And Rich, I'm going to take you to a place where you can get a hamburger for less than that's for sure. Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I gotta lower my hand.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. Thank you for recognizing me again. I just want to thank you very much for the way you ran this meeting and how open you were and how hard you worked it in the public's interest in this matter. And Kevin, your support, and Lou Franco, who who more articulately than I could sort of try to lead us in the right direction. So I just want to thank you all. This is probably the most informative and productive meeting since this whole thing began that I've witnessed. So I really appreciate your efforts and thank you.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Carl. We aim to please.
Yes, and you do. Thank you.
I think we got one. I think Lou Franco's got his hand up again.
Lou, you.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think when I first articulated what I did in the beginning of the meeting, it was a little dicey. It was like I knew it was going to be a tightrope walk, but I think it was walked exactly right. So I think you did what you needed to do properly in public, and you're going to do what you properly should be doing in executive session. So even though it was done on the fly and it could have gone bad, I think that it went right. Okay.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting
Motion to move into executive session.
and not return?
No,
Move.
we have to turn, we have that on the agenda.
No,
No, he said we can, Lou said that we can change the motion to enter into executive session and not return.
okay.
Move to enter into executive session and not to return.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good day, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one,
Thanks.
folks.